I survived 100 days in the Nether. In a world where everything is trying to kill you, 40 hours of hellish survival, 100 days without sleep, without animals, and without villagers, I must fully explore all the locations and find a way to obtain food. My only source of valuable items will be fortresses and bastions, but the brutal piglins have no idea who they're dealing with. My goal for this survival is to build a mega fortress for protection, and of course to battle one of the major bosses. Enjoy the video. Day 1. I spawned in the Nether. I was surrounded by pillars of lava and a small crimson forest. I immediately started exploring, but suddenly a small hoglin attacked me. From the very first seconds, this survival promises to be interesting. I quickly climbed one of the trees to be a little safer and survey the area. There's no day or night in the Nether, so for convenience, I've added a real day and time counter in the top right corner of the screen. As it turned out, I spawned on a small island surrounded by lava. Nearby were basalt plains, crimson forests, and a whole lot of lava. I gathered my first tree and made wooden tools. Fortunately, in my case, I could at least do that. A few minutes later, a ghast flew by and decided to show who's the boss here. In panic, I immediately closed myself off with planks and tried to figure out what to do next. It had only been 10 minutes, and I already had only 2 hearts left. Below me, a piglin was waiting for me, so going down was definitely not the best idea right now. Carefully, I moved to the neighboring trees to gather as many blocks as possible for construction. Ghasts were flying nearby, so I needed to be extra careful. To be honest, I spent over 30 attempts trying to start this survival, and I really hope this one will be the last. Using half slabs, I managed to build a bridge to the neighboring island. Day 2, I continued gathering wood. My plan now is to find a safe place as quickly as possible, although in the Nether, that's something out of the realm of fantasy. Around noon, all the ghasts disappeared, and I could finally enjoy the views. Seizing the moment, I built a bridge to a distant island where the first deposits of blackstone and basalt were located. In the current reality, blackstone will serve as an excellent source for stone tools, which will be a nice bonus. I built a temporary shelter in the mountain and upgraded my tools. Nearby, I found my first gold vein, but I had to be very careful not to attract any piglins, who would certainly not appreciate what I was doing. I crafted golden boots and took a step closer to safer conditions in this world, but such a small amount of gold will clearly not be enough, so I spent the rest of the night searching for more. Day 3, I gathered some warped fungi that could protect me from the ferocious hoglins and would allow me to explore the crimson biome. Thanks to the gold I obtained, I started my first trade with a piglin, hoping to get something valuable. Overall, string will be a good addition to this survival. Right now, I have no idea where I will set up my first base, so I decided to set up a temporary camp in the mountain and created a small storage area for my resources. From the fungi I gathered, I made a stew and finally managed to satisfy my hunger, but one bowl definitely isn't enough. Well, it's time to go on a journey and search for the missing ingredients. Near one of the cliffs, I found a decent mushroom patch, but the idyll was interrupted by a ghast. I took refuge in my temporary shelter to rest and recover health. Day 4, my journey continues, and I'm in search of a good amount of mushrooms. Right now, food is a huge problem for me, so I need to solve this as soon as possible. As it turns out, there's a fortress nearby, but getting too close is definitely not a good idea. Near the lava, I found a good stash of red mushrooms and decided to carefully descend to collect them. Day 5, on my way back home, I gathered some warped wood and had thoughts about testing my luck and getting my first meat. Several hoglins were waiting for me on the first island, but it turned out that fighting them wouldn't be the best idea. Using half slabs, I managed to carefully descend and kill them, but for now, it's better to stick to eating stew. I started gathering crimson wood, which would be great for building my base. The food issue is partially resolved, so now I can think about my shelter. In the evening, I entered the Soul Sand Valley and completed a new achievement for exploring all the biomes. I gathered some bone blocks and grew my first large mushroom. I tried to gather something from it, but the results were rather disappointing. Day 6. As it turned out, I'm not the only one trying to survive in this world, and there's an active hunt for hoglins going on. I threw all the unnecessary trash into the lava and started gathering wood. My plan is to build my base in a lava lake, and the crimson wood is fire resistant, making it a perfect foundation. Also, I shouldn't forget about the glowing blocks. By evening, I had gathered 5 stacks of wood, which should be enough for now. In the distance, I noticed a bastion and a vein of gold blocks. I think I'll have a great reason to explore it in the future. While moving along such narrow paths, I have to be very careful of ghasts so they don't decide to dunk me in the lava. I sent some resources to my storage and made my first batch of half slabs. Day 7. I decided not to go far and build my base in this huge lava lake. First, I laid out a path and connected the 2 islands. I found the approximate center and started marking out the circle, but the first attempt was quite a failure. I found the center and calculated the blocks in every direction. The first blocks could be removed, and then I could start my second attempt. After marking 3 blocks on each side, things went much faster. By evening, the layout was ready, and as usual, a ghast came by to assess my skills in making the roundest circles. The foundation turned out pretty good, but this is just the beginning. I made a new batch of stew from the fungi I gathered earlier and replenished my health. Day 8. The next step is to fill everything in from the inside. In each direction, I added a glowing mushroom for lighting. It would also be nice to connect my base to each biome for convenience and quick movement. It's quite dangerous to move along such narrow paths above the lava, but after surviving on Skyblock, I already have some experience. By the evening, I had completed the foundation of a safe island, but the issue with the ghasts remains unresolved. I upgraded my tools and moved all the chests to the platform. I wanted to cook some meat, but as it turns out, crimson wood isn't suitable for that. Day 9. I continued trading with the piglins and got my first obsidian. My current goal is to get some iron pieces to craft an iron gut and shield. I used all my gold, but the piglins didn't seem interested in giving the item did. I had a snack and immediately began thinking about what to do next. There's nothing left for me but to leave my domain once again and go search for more gold. I also tried to replenish my mushroom stock and explore the nearby area. Day 10. I decided to put the trading idea on hold and added new pieces of golden armor. On my way back home, I wanted to explore the fortress, but I held myself back. Such adventures at such an early stage of development are clearly not for me. I gathered some netherrack and headed towards the first bastion. I carefully built in the right direction and kept an eye out for ghasts. But as it turned out, one of them was a hostage of the piglins, and what they were doing with him will remain a mystery. Day 11. And here I am standing on gold blocks surveying the bastion. I met my first brutal piglin, but he turned out to be trapped, which was a huge advantage for me. After not finding any chests, I boldly returned home. Thoughts about obtaining iron were bothering me, so I spent the rest of the day mining gold. Day 12. And fate has once again led me to a nether fortress. These places also have chests with valuable resources, so I need to check it out as soon as possible. As I made my way through basalt mountains, I gradually approached my destination and tried to figure out how to act in such a situation. Carefully, I broke some blocks and gathered a few mushrooms. I killed a few magma cubes, and, to my surprise, there were no wither skeletons. Very carefully, I snuck into a room and found my first chest with diamonds and gold. Well, that was an insanely lucky and valuable find, but the question about iron remains open. Day 13. I killed my first wither skeleton and boldly continued on my way. It turned out to be not as dangerous as I thought, but I still had to be careful with every step. I searched all the rooms, but didn't find any other chests. Broke the blaze spawner and encountered another skeleton. I used the diamonds to craft a pickaxe and a sword. These tools are what I need the most right now. In the Soul Sand Valley, I found a skeleton guarding bone blocks, and I also got trapped by magma cubes. Without hesitation, I dug down and replenished my health. I started looking for the way home and took a quick dip in the lava. With such adventures, mushroom stew disappears in the blink of an eye. From soul sand, sticks, and logs, I made a campfire where I could soon cook some meat. Day 14. After exploring the area and gathering gold, I now have the opportunity opportunity to trade with piglins. A minute later, I finally got my first pieces of iron. For all the trading, the piglin got 40 gold ingots, and I got 55 pieces of iron. In the evening, I crafted my first shield, and now this survival could become much more comfortable for me, or so I thought at the time, but it would turn out to be quite different. That night, I set out to search for brown mushrooms. Day 15. I crafted a bucket from iron, and it would be nice to try out an idea. I found a large group of hoglins and decided to roast a few. As a result, in a minute, I had 6 cooked steaks in my inventory. I hid behind some warped mushrooms and looked for a new victim. It's important to catch the moment and not overcook the pig so the meat doesn't burn. That night, the piglin army decided to help me out a bit, for which they certainly deserve a special thank you. Day 16. I sent some meat to smoke on the campfire. It's time to expand and significantly increase the area for the future house. I stepped back 6 blocks from each side and started building the foundation for the new circles. After 5 minutes, everything sped up and I quickly got the hang of placing blocks. Day 17. In the morning, I adjusted one of the last circles and finished the foundation. I climbed a hill to get a better view, and everything looked quite interesting. I've never had this kind of survival experience in a lava lake, and I hope the next such adventure won't be anytime soon. I started sorting things in my storage, but it turned out that my crimson wood supplies left much to be desired. Armed with warped mushrooms and a stone axe, I headed towards the Crimson Island. I mixed the routine task of gathering wood with hunting hoglins, trying to gather some food. Gathering wood with a stone axe is a painful process, but either way, progress is being made. Day 18. When I returned home, I sent the new meat to the campfire and then got to work on building platform. The ghast decided to help me a bit and adjusted a few blocks. It turned out that materials were depleting pretty quickly, and after the second circle, I was already out of half my logs. I already have plans for the starting farms I can build and what kind of house design I want, but without a proper foundation, there's no point in thinking about that yet. Gradually, block by block, I moved forward, and by night, the first 3 circles were fully ready. Day 19. I went hunting for hoglins, but it turned out they broke my armor pretty badly, so I need to think about upgrading it. Thanks to the warped mushrooms, things are going fairly well, but there are still big problems with food and blocks in the world. After resting in the evening, I returned to construction. Day 20. At dawn, armed with a lot of axes, I headed into the warped forest to gather green wood. I need some blocks for variety, and to break up the monotonous platform a little. I think green and red will make a nice combination, but I'll need to check that out soon. Using warped planks, I extended the paths between platforms, and it looks much better than before. I got so into it that I even reached the longest path leading to the Crimson Island. Day 21. By lunchtime, everything was ready, and I was another step closer to having a full house. I already have the space, which means it's time to think about the first full-fledged food farm. In the mountain, I gathered some netherrack and made a smooth descent to the lava lake. I chose one of the platforms and began building a small farm. In my case, this will be an ordinary pen for keeping and breeding hoglins. I'm going to spend 100 days here, and I really don't want to be running around every day looking for meat. I watched a ghast, which decided to take a lava bath. I returned its gift and got another achievement. Day 22. I placed green gates on all sides and, of course, closed everything with fences. I still have questions about how to obtain meat, but I plan to solve that after breeding the hoglins. I grew a vine to have an escape route in case of danger. By noon, the pen was ready, and it was time to look for the first boars. I found the first candidate, who turned out to be quite angry and killed a piglin. When trying to find a second pig, I took the opportunity to gather red mushrooms mushrooms for their breeding. At night, the plan was successfully implemented, and from now on, food will no longer be an issue in this world. But it's important to remember that one wrong move and this survival could end right there. Day 23. While my pigs are breeding, I need to hang on and keep hunting hoglins manually. I went to the first bastion and, using a diamond pickaxe, gathered valuable iron blocks. They won't be useless for crafting armor or trading with piglins. Day 24. There were already 5 piglets in my pen, which is very encouraging. I started looking for red mushrooms and must admit it takes quite a bit of time. Very soon, I plan to go on an expedition and raid bastions, but for that, I need to prepare and gather a fair amount of food for the long journey. Day 25. It turns out hoglins can only be fed once every 20 minutes, so I need to figure out what to do during the wait. Besides traveling, I need materials for my fortress, so once I was in the basalt deltas, I began searching for black stone. I need a lot of blocks for large-scale construction, as well as materials for stone tools. Day 26. I am actively studying the melting temperature of hoglins and, of course, feeding them mushrooms. I built a platform from netherrack to eliminate unnecessary hoglins. I wanted to play volleyball with a ghast, but it disappeared in an unknown direction. The search for food continues, and I spent the rest of the day and night on this task. Day 27. It turns out that endermen are actively running to me, carrying green blocks. The hoglin breeding process is still ongoing, and meanwhile, I went to mine netherrack. At this stage of survival, I don't have much to do, so I decided to gather some blocks for future construction. Day 28. There are already enough hoglins for more active breeding, and I just need a few more days to fully meet my food needs. I went hunting in the forest and began exploring the new meat harvesting mechanics. I set hoglins on fire with lava and then showed them my diamond sword, which they loved, and they fell asleep. This method turned out to be much more effective because all the meat stays with me. Day 29. Delicious, juicy steaks are great, but to get them, I need to keep a close eye on replenishing my stock of red mushrooms to feed the hoglins. This day, I explored the islands to the right of my base and looked for mushroom meadows. I unexpectedly went too far and found my first portal. I thought it would be a waste not to check it out. In the chest, I found a golden axe and sword. On the way back home, I tried teaching a hoglin to swim, but it wasn't a very good student. I got a little lost and couldn't find my way home for a while, but this situation led me to a more valuable discovery. Behind a cliff, I saw a bastion, which will be a great bonus for this journey. I had some food, so I decided to explore it. When I got close, I carefully greeted my first brute piglin, who was guarding a rather large chest, and I needed to figure out how to get to it. Day 30. I made a tunnel between the walls and carefully walled up each block. The first chest contained a crossbow, ancient debris, and some gold. The second one had a golden carrot and a few bone blocks. A minute later, I found another chest in the same room, guarded by 2 piglins. Inside, I found my first iron and a golden apple. The second one will be very important in this survival when fighting with wither skeletons. My inventory quickly filled up, and I decided to leave some junk in the chest. In the last chest, there was another golden apple and a template for upgrades. There may have been more chests in this bastion, but I didn't want to tempt fate, so I left very satisfied and headed home. In the new Crimson Forest, I gathered valuable mushrooms and, of course, collected hoglin tusks. At night, I managed to return to the portal I was familiar with. Day 31. Each feeding increases the hoglin population by 30%, but I still need more time to reach the desired number. I felt sorry for my diamond pickaxe, so I crafted a few stone pickaxes for everyday use. The rest of the day was spent searching for red mushrooms. Unfortunately, the hoglins turned out to be too greedy. Day 32. My wandering through the Nether led me to a large biome of the Nether wastes, and very close by, I found another bastion. Honestly, I hadn't planned to search for them so soon, but if there's a chance to get valuable items, why not take it? I used blocks to climb up to survey the area. Thanks to my golden armor, only the brute piglins took notice of me. Despite their intelligence, I still had to be very careful, as one wrong step could lead to bad consequences. The resources in these chests were just as valuable as before, but I was hoping to find something made of diamond. I carefully descended to find a few more hidden spots. I now had enough golden carrots for a long time, and the arrows would be useful for fighting blazes. I was very careful, so without wasting any time, I rushed home. Day 33. By noon, I arrived and saw a very familiar lava lake. I put all the valuable resources into a separate chest for storage. Meanwhile, the hoglins were happy to see me. During my Bastion trips, I realized one problem. My inventory was too small to carry everything at once, but I think I know how to solve this. In the evening, I went to a nearby mountain to look for endermen. Gradually, I lured them to me and tried to get ender pearls needed for crafting the magic chest. I had a stack of iron in my inventory, and it would be nice to trade with a piglin. I wanted to get obsidian as soon as possible, but the chance of it dropping was very low. Day 34. I sorted things in my storage and thought about what to do next. I found some arrows and crafted my first bow to fight the blazes. There was a fortress nearby, which would be a great source of blaze rods and skeleton bones, but the blaze made it clear that it was better not to approach them. I circumvented the problem and eventually got into the fortress, but all the mobs magically disappeared. Day 35. I found my first victim and got the first blaze rod. Archery and battles with skeletons continued. In my case, even an ordinary skeleton can be a tough opponent, especially if it has an enchanted bow. The magma cubes were much easier to deal with, but even they started to annoy me as they kept appearing where I didn't want them. I decided to stay a little longer and try my luck at getting a wither skull, but it turned out that skeletons in this fortress were a rare sight. At night, a group of skeletons trapped me in a corner, but I wasn't going to give up that quickly, so I had to make a quick escape. Day 36. I sent the zombified piglins to the hoglins for food, and there were only a few left before I could start reducing their population. I crafted an ender chest and tried to destroy it with my silk touch axe, but it didn't work. This means that for every journey, I'll need to make a separate chest. I gathered the remaining block supplies and went to the portal. I dismantled it and now had the opportunity to make 2 ender chests for my journey to the new Bastion. Day 37. I killed a hoglin and accidentally noticed the shape of a bastion somewhere in the fog. I started building a path to the new lands to explore them. I got as close as I could and carefully examined everything. Near the edge of the walls, I found a chest and carefully tried to open it. I made a room so the piglins wouldn't touch me, but the chest didn't contain anything valuable. I began gathering blocks for building new paths. By nightfall, I reached a new chest on the 2nd floor, but besides obsidian and an iron block, I didn't find anything else. Nearby, there was another room guarded by a brute piglin, so the chest there should contain something valuable. I sent the piglin down, but the chest didn't excite me much. I was about to head home when suddenly, on the 3rd floor, I noticed 2 chests. Day 38. Well, here it is, my first pickaxe with efficiency 1. One of the piglins took advantage of the moment, but luckily, I quickly ran away and left him behind. I spent the rest of the day returning home while collecting mushrooms, killing hoglins, and exploring new biomes. Day 39. Once again, I got lost because the Nether turned out to be a very confusing place, and it's hard to find a straight path anywhere. I wandered for a long time through the Crimson Forest, but suddenly I found another bastion. Of course, I shouldn't miss the opportunity to explore it. Upon entering and seeing large water reservoirs, I realized that this was one of the biggest and most dangerous bastions. I tried to sneak in, but immediately encountered a piglin and quickly blocked myself in. I watched the dancing piglin and successfully pushed him down. I killed one of them, but his brothers came to the rescue. In one of the chests, there was a lot of gold and a pickaxe with mending. This can only mean one thing. Now I have a chance to get an infinite pickaxe for my survival. I put all the valuable resources into the ender chest so I could continue my journey. Day 40. Very carefully, I made my way to the heart of this fortress. The layout of these bastions is well known to me, and at the very center there is a chest and quite a few gold blocks. I broke the magma cube spawner and began luring the piglins who guarded these treasures. I suggested they swim in the lava, and they kindly agreed. What I found in the chest really pleased me. It was my first pieces of diamond armor, along with quite a few gold blocks. When I reached the rooms on my way, a group of hoglins had gathered, but they were clearly no match for the piglins. After collecting the loot, I could confidently head home. Day 41. After returning home, I sorted all my valuable resources into a separate chest and began preparing a new batch of meat. Finally, it was time to focus on the hoglin population on my farm. Day 42. My inventory was filled with 1.5 stacks of juicy steaks, which meant I could forget about food gathering for the time being, but breeding hoglins was definitely still on the agenda. I gathered all my iron supplies and crafted a full stack of iron ingots, as well as an anvil. A minute later, I had a pickaxe with unbreaking and efficiency. While feeding the hoglins, a ghast visited and set some of my pigs on fire. I certainly didn't expect this turn of events. Day 43. Some of the baby hoglins had to be dealt with, leaving only a few in the pen. They got stuck in a hole, and I needed to figure out how to rescue them because I really didn't want to go out and find new ones. I spent the whole day trying to get out, but they weren't giving up. Eventually, I managed to build a barrier and cover the hole from the outside. Day 44. I went to the Crimson Forest to gather wood. I noticed that my golden armor had completely broken, so it would be good to upgrade it and add some iron. There were only 3 hoglins left on my farm, so unfortunately, increasing their population would take quite some time. Day 45. After such active adventures, I needed a break, and I wanted to focus on building my house, but I can't build a house out of air, so I definitely needed some blocks. I first headed out to harvest warped wood. By the time I returned home at night, I had 10 stacks of red and green logs. Day 46. The foundation would be made from basalt and blackstone. Of course, there's no shortage of basalt in this world, but with this pickaxe, the mining speed is painfully slow, but in my case, there weren't many options. By evening, I had a double chest full of blocks for building my fortress. I continue to feed my boars and feel very sad about how few of them there are. I made a foundation out of slabs and began constructing the basalt foundation. I first marked out the main entrance and side windows. Day 47. It looks quite interesting, but there's still a lot of work ahead. I crafted green trapdoors to imitate windows since glass is hard to come by in this world. I started making walls from blackstone, leaving space for columns or windows. I placed trapdoors under myself, and when I rose up, I quickly descended. It looks quite amusing and fairly quick. I added blackstone and some steps at the entrance. Day 48. I added basalt columns at the top of each entrance. Inside, I created a platform to place blackstone blocks. Next, I'll work on the frames for large windows on the second floor. I installed trapdoors between blocks and tried to close them in the right direction. I inspected everything from the inside, and so far, I'm pleased with the result. It looks pretty gloomy, but in a world like this, it's to be expected. On the outside, it's still a strange box, but I'll try to fix that. I quickly ran out of blackstone, so I had to go to the neighboring biome to gather more. Day 49. The morning started with a lava bath and fighting magma cubes. These guys have been a big nuisance to my survival lately, but suddenly I realized that I could quickly repair my pickaxe with their help. By lunchtime, it was completely broken, so I decided to test this method of experience farming. I tried playing with a ghast, but clearly I was at a disadvantage and decided to hide. I remembered that quartz is also an excellent source of experience in the Nether, so I immediately headed in the direction of the required biome. Every piece mined repairs my pickaxe by 10 durability, which is quite efficient and fast. Day 50. By morning, most of the pickaxe had been repaired, but suddenly I wanted to try another method of experience farming. I started attracting zombified piglins and slowly killing them. It's fairly quick, but it takes time to wait for them to spawn. I could build a farm on the nether roof, but physically I just can't get there. Somehow, zombified piglins began showing up, which is incredibly rare, but this time there were way too many of them. Some of them were killed carefully with my pickaxe to avoid hitting a piglin or an enderman. Day 51. The next step in construction will of course be the roof. For decoration, I also need some magma blocks, which are easy to find in any part of the lava lakes. I expanded the upper part of the fortress by 1 block and began laying the foundation for the windows on the roof. In the future, there might be a 3rd floor, but that's still far off. Construction was interrupted by a ghast, and I had to quickly flee. In the evening, it somehow vanished into the endless lava. I was able to greatly increase the number of hoglins, which is of course a pleasant surprise. I went to a neighboring island and greeted the ghast. I started cleaning up the very first path I used when I began my survival. When I got to the roof, it started to get in the way, so I need to fix that. Day 52. I continue building frames, and similar windows will be on every side of my house. By lunchtime, everything was ready and looked pretty good. It seems that my supply of green wood will definitely be insufficient, so I'll spend the rest of the day and night in the warped forest. Day 53. I now have 5 stacks of logs, which should be enough for the roof. Somehow, I made an enderman angry, and he was promptly banished from this world. I carefully observed the ghast's behavior, and it's strange that over time, they just lose interest in me and fly off in an unknown direction. I went up to the fortress and started adding green blocks and steps to extend them to the base of the main roof. For now, the windows will be made from magma blocks, but I might replace them with lava later. After a few minutes, I connected everything with blocks and started working on the main roof. Day 54. I closed off the interior with blocks and left a flat surface to build an observation deck. Piglins and zombified piglins started spawning on solid blocks, so I had to block them with buttons. I added redwood near the windows to break up the dark walls. I went to the crimson forest to gather vines, which will also be needed for decoration. I hung them on each side, but it didn't really improve the situation. Day 55. I added blackstone crosses to some of the windows. It was a spontaneous decision, but it looks quite unique. I made the layout and ran into an angry ghast. For several minutes, he wouldn't leave me alone, but eventually he flew off, and I was able to continue building the observation deck. I placed columns made of redwood around the perimeter of the circle, and now I need to figure out how to make the roof. I made the base out of blackstone slabs and rounded them off on all sides. I mixed steps and blocks with green wood and gradually connected everything. I also added a cross and some magma blocks on top. Day 56. Overall, it turned out pretty well. This will be my fortress for this survival, but I also left space for the necessary farms and mob taming. To make my stay here even safer, I started building a basalt fence. I added basalt spikes on top, hoping that now the ghasts will have less chance of catching me. Overall, the fence complemented the building very well and made my fortress more complete, but I still feel like something is missing. Day 57. I smelted ancient debris and created my first netherite ingot. I wanted to upgrade my pickaxe, but then I suddenly realized that I could find new enchantments and improve my pickaxe even more. With this thought, I headed towards new islands in search of another bastion. Ideally, I'd like to find a diamond axe for wood gathering and armor for fighting the wither. Day 58. I couldn't pass by the gold ore, but the piglin quickly noticed it. I upgraded my helmet and continued my journey without any problems. I wandered for a long time through ravines and mountains, hoping to find something, but so far, I found nothing except netherrack and crimson forests. I sent a ghast to the afterlife and visited the zombified piglins. After a few minutes, I found a new fortress, and it would be nice to explore it. Unfortunately, there were no chests in it, so my search continues. I found a ruined portal and a bit of iron. Day 59. After crawling through the mountain, I finally found the fabled Bastion. Sneaking around from the back, I carefully stole gold blocks, and surprisingly, the piglins didn't even notice. I managed to get into a room, and I had to figure out how to get rid of the guards. In fact, the tunnel strategy is very effective, and you can quickly get to the chest, but aside from a golden apple, I found nothing valuable. My search took me to a soul sand biome, where I found some useful mushrooms for food. I also encountered several skeletons guarding the entrance to another bastion. I sneaked inside through the walls and took a good look at the piglin patterns. In the first chest, I found a diamond shovel and arrows. Day 60. Very carefully, I tried to descend and admire the general views of this bastion. Each floor has a small chest, but I found nothing valuable in them. Continuing my journey, I found a ghost ghast who threw his fireball at me and then disappeared instantly. At this point, I've been surviving in this world for 20 hours and it still surprises me. To mine blocks, I use ordinary stone pickaxes because my diamond one is almost used up. Day 61. I found another bastion and I had hopes of finding something truly valuable there. First, of course, I headed for the main treasure room because that's where the most valuable items are stored. I started fighting magma cubes and also recharged my pickaxe a bit. In the chest, I found a diamond sword and helmet, which was a nice addition to my defense. But the most valuable find awaited me around the corner in the next room, where I found my second diamond pickaxe with efficiency 5. This was a true success. Though it doesn't have unbreaking, the mining speed will increase significantly. Day 62. I've traveled 1,000 blocks from my home and had completely forgotten where I was, but in any case, my search led me to yet another bastion. I tried to build safe rooms, but piglins rushed at me from all floors. At that moment, my golden armor broke, and I became a target even for the archers, who tried to throw me into the lava. At the very bottom, I was met by an army of cubes guarding a large number of gold blocks, as well as some diamonds and diamond armor. After a few bastions, I now have a full set of diamond armor to fight skeletons and the wither, but that challenge still awaits me. Day 63. I found myself in a very large lava lake, and under the watchful eye of a ghast, I tried to quickly build to the nearest land. I also couldn't forget about the mushrooms, which would at least diversify my meat-heavy diet. Day 64. Finally, in the morning, I saw my old paths and easily found my way home. I had traveled several thousand blocks, killed dozens of piglins, and explored several new bastions, but now I'm home. I think for the near future, I've had enough of such adventures because I've found absolutely everything I need. I used a template, pickaxe, and a netherite ingot to upgrade my first tool. Day 65. I went to mine some blackstone blocks, which will be necessary for my future builds. With my new pickaxe, mining all of this is a pleasure, but the rapid loss of durability remains one of the downsides. Day 66. I'm keeping track of the population of my hoglins. During my very active survival and travels, food runs out incredibly fast. From the warehouse, I gathered some arrows and headed to the nearest fortress to look for wither skeletons. For safety, I built columns in different places to keep the skeletons from reaching me, but there were also blazes, who aren't so easy to hide from. Day 67. I'm actively exploring the fortress, but the skeletons aren't in any hurry to spawn. I run to different places, hoping for a soul to spawn, but my efforts were in vain. By noon, the first skeleton appeared, but it will clearly be too few to get a skull. I need 3 heads, and right now I'd like to find at least 1, but based on the results of my search, I realize that it's not going to be so easy. Day 68. After spending 20 minutes in this fortress, I encountered only 5 skeletons. I begin to suspect that this fortress was clearly cursed by someone, or perhaps my stay in this world has been too long. I've run out of food for my animals, and I need to head to the Crimson Forest to gather more. Day 69. The first hunt for wither skulls was unsuccessful, so it's time to change the environment a bit and focus on improving my base. I started using green slabs to fence off each circle and prepare the foundation for the fence. Overall, I like the idea of such protection, and I'd like to reinforce every circle. I began with the hoglins, who had recently been burned by the ghast. By night, everything was ready, and from the outside, it's starting to look much more massive and intimidating. Day 70. Next, I focused on protecting the circle near the basalt biome. I built everything quickly and went to the observation deck. I showed the ghast who's boss, and then went to mine some basalt blocks to finish the construction soon. The fence may seem small, but it takes a lot of blocks to build. Day 71. The morning started with a ghast and its rescue from this world. After a long basalt mining session, I had to go searching for experience in distant lands. I aggroed a piglin zombie, but it turned out that they ran out quickly. Returning home, I replenished my supply of stone pickaxes and set off to mine netherrack. Day 72. It so happened that the nearby lands had suffered greatly, and now I had to run even further to find the coveted quartz pieces. I wandered through the Nether for a long time, inspecting every corner to make sure I didn't miss any white ore. By evening, half of my pickaxe was successfully repaired. When I encountered the old paths, I quickly oriented myself and knew which direction my home was in. Day 73. I encountered a fortress on my path, and it was a great opportunity to explore it. With fear in my eyes and trembling hands, I built my way forward to reach it across a lava lake. I greeted the first skeletons and began to explore the surroundings. I killed a few skeletons, and there were quite a few of them in this place. I quickly found the entrance and my first chest with diamonds. The second chest had an even more valuable find. I now had a saddle, which would help me tame a lava eel. After a few minutes, everything had been explored, and I had no more business here. Tired but satisfied, I headed back home. Day 74. Near the turn and portal, I built a sign so I could return here next time to collect wither skulls. The thought of fighting the wither still doesn't leave me, but I'll try to implement those plans later. I fed my herd of pigs and finished repairing my netherite pickaxe. I found some string in the storage and made my first mushroom fishing rod. Finding a suitable victim near my home, I quickly lured it to me. It has a complete food source, and I have transportation for traveling across lava lakes. From this moment on, survival became even more comfortable because I no longer need to build bridges or try to bypass the lava. I made a parking spot for the new pet near my house and left it there for later. A hostile piglin snuck into my house, but it quickly left my domain. In the meantime, I updated my shield and prepared to implement new plans. Day 75. I realized that collecting wither skulls will take quite a bit of time, so I might as well start now. Using my new mount, I quickly reached the fortress and built a ladder to go up. A minute later, I had successfully killed 5 skeletons, but to get at least one head, I had to work hard. Although, considering the temperature of the Nether, this expression is not metaphorical at all. Thanks to the previously explored bastions, I had collected a small supply of arrows, making it comfortable to fight the blazes. In the distant corners, I saw a group of skeletons, but they weren't the right color. At night, a ghast joined the battle. Day 76. The next ghast had fewer chances of survival. I ran in different directions to create more space for the skeletons I needed to spawn. By evening, I had completely run out of food. After spending 40 minutes in the fortress, I still didn't find a single skull in my inventory. To distract myself a bit, I decided to return home and work on another interesting project. I looked into the lava eel's eyes, and it was begging you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I decided to make a diamond axe for more comfortable wood gathering. Day 77. That day, the need for food became urgent, and of course, my pigs would come to the rescue. I had been fattening them up and breeding them for this moment. As sad as it is, in these conditions, only the strongest survive. I spent the whole day preparing food and sorting items, and in the evening, I went to the warped forest to gather wood. Day 78. My time as a lumberjack is in full swing. I had an idea on how to speed up the spawn of the desired skeletons, and for that, I needed a lot of wood. After returning home, I gathered all the necessary items and headed to the fortress. To increase the chances of wither skeleton spawns, I needed to reduce the area where they could appear, no matter how strange that sounds. I made buttons from planks and began filling every block with them. I chose the farthest and most inconspicuous zone, which could indeed influence the general mob spawn. Day 79. Things are progressing pretty quickly, and it's the first time I'm doing such a task, but the buttons disappear in the blink of an eye. To cover just one piece of the fortress, I needed several stacks of logs. I placed the buttons on the floor and between the walls. The sounds are quite pleasant, so I took the opportunity to rest a bit after such intense survival. But I'll tell you, the biggest challenges still await me ahead. After closing the first sector, I noticed a group of skeletons nearby, and I had to take advantage of the situation. The sixth skeleton turned out to be very lucky, and finally, I got my first skull. Reaching the blaze spawner, I had to destroy it and continue placing buttons calmly. My peaceful time was once again interrupted by a ghast, but I already knew what he wanted. At night, I managed to escape from the mountainous area and finally reach the main section on the right side. Day 80. The morning began with a very active attack from the blazes. By midday, things had calmed down, and I could safely return to placing buttons. I closed the cross section near the mountain and removed the skeletons of the wrong color. By evening, a third of the fortress was successfully blocked from mob spawns, and it took me 8 stacks of logs. To avoid dying of boredom, I went to the forest to gather wood. At night, I had a very unpleasant surprise. One skull that could have been mine simply fell into the abyss. Well, that was a feeling I hadn't experienced in this survival before. Day 81. According to my observations, skeletons started to appear more frequently, which is great news. In the evening, I noticed a group in the farthest corner, and one of them gave me the second skull. Withers and blazes became much more active, and I had to run away frequently to save my life. At midnight, I managed to get my third skull, and I must say, it was incredibly fast. I lured the escaping lava eel and, tired, swam back home. Day 82. I still have unfinished business on my land, and it would be good to finish everything. I started building a fence on the empty plots, and by evening, everything was ready. I looked at the view from the side, and it looked much better. But each of these sectors will be a separate place for taming mobs. Day 83. Boats can't be made from these types of wood, so I had to spend some iron to make a minecart and rails. The first mini-zoo will be for taming and studying piglins. From the main entrance, I'm building a circle inside a circle, because as we all know, you can never have too many circles. Taking the opportunity, I made the same markings in the other section. In each corner, I'm building columns for the frame, and in the center of the piglin section, I'll place chests. Day 84. I went hunting for a piglin, and instead of the minecart with rails, I decided to simply lure it. I gave it a golden chest plate, so it wouldn't despawn. A few minutes later, it was already in the pen, and it would be nice to find it a mate. Day 85. Another piglin fell into my trap and accepted the gift, but unexpectedly, another one joined it. At one point, they just stopped and didn't want to go any further than my storage. Unfortunately, I had to eliminate them and start searching for new individuals. There was no one in the meadow, so I decided to reduce the number of mobs to give the chance for new ones to spawn. I spent the whole day searching, and at night, I finally found the perfect candidate without a crossbow. Day 86. The third piglin turned out to be smarter than the rest, and tried to get close to my hoglins, for which he paid with his life. It was probably a heroic death, but he was clearly destined for other purposes. I gave the last piglin golden boots, and now my little zoo is almost complete. Next in line will be a place to study Enderman. The columns, of course, will be made from warped wood, and the classic green fence will be there. Dealing with Endermen is much more complicated, and I will need to put them in minecarts to prevent them from disappearing. I also built a shelter to lure them in and stay alive. I'm keeping an eye out for the right Enderman and running straight to the pen. Finally, it managed to get into the minecart, and everything turned out to be pretty simple. The second one didn't take long to arrive either, and in these conditions, I can stare at them endlessly. Day 87. I'm removing unnecessary blocks. Using a fishing rod, I moved the Enderman closer to the center, and now I need to figure out how to decorate this pen. I wanted to break a grass block with a golden axe, but for such tasks, need a shovel. In this case, the Enderman will help me, as they are already carrying these blocks and can share them. I went to the meadow near my house, and killing Endermen here is much more comfortable. Some of them brought grass, which looked quite amusing. Day 88. I've gathered 10 blocks of grass in my inventory, and with this amount I can do something. A ghast flew to my fortress, but poor thing doesn't even know from which side to approach to catch me. I placed blocks near the Enderman and grew some big trees. It's much faster than building them myself. I found a small stash of quartz in the warehouse and started decorating the wooden pillars. I added a bit of nether fence on top. I wanted to do something with the stairs, but nothing seemed to look good. Day 89. I'm inspecting the 2 finished sections with piglins and endermen. It would be nice to mix up the piglins' habitat and build some kind of mini bastion. I put up columns made of blackstone and bricks on different sides and connected them. I added gold ore and stairs to some blocks. Between the columns, I will place small gold reserves to give the piglins something to do. I'm decorating the outer part of the columns with fences and slabs. I thought for a long time about what to do with the last section and suddenly realized that it would be perfect for lava mobs. Unlike the others, they are useful and don't try to eat me. I set up a lava jacuzzi inside and brought my first pet. Day 90. I decided to use all my saddles and lure 2 more lava mobs. As usual, there will be columns around the circle, and on top, part of stairs and quartz blocks with vines. I made an ascent to the observation deck in my gazebo and wanted to see what it looks like from above. I think you've never seen such views in my survival. A base in the middle of endless lava, basalt deltas, and flying ghasts. Something truly incredible. I'm observing and studying the behavior of the piglins, and it seems that they're a little bored here. Day 91. I updated my armor and went to the nearest fortress to gather some nether bricks. I heard some strange ghast noises and decided to help it a little. I wanted to further secure my fortress by adding a fence between the side platforms. Day 92. I felt like something was missing inside my warehouse, so I decided to add some lava near each entrance. This will emphasize the presence in such a world and add a little light to these dark, gloomy walls. I went towards the bastion to catch a brute piglin. I don't know how I ended up in such a situation, but if it's necessary, then it's necessary. I set up a platform to safely descend and eliminated one of the ghasts. In the trap, there was the piglin I knew, and I just needed to carefully lure him to my place. I made sure he was following me, but he kept returning home several times. I panicked and fell down, but fortunately, I survived, and now I just had to bring the piglin to the destination. But everything went wrong, and he burned in the lava. Returning to the Bastion, I found only a few regular piglins, and with such results, I had to head home. Day 93, I gathered some blocks and with renewed strength returned to the Bastion. I really wanted to get that specific piglin in my possession. In one of the rooms, I finally found a brute piglin who immediately fell into a hole and was ready for new adventures. I led him to the descent, but my plans were disrupted by a rude skeleton, and I had to run quickly to heal. I started running over the trees to smoothly descend near the path, and the piglin followed me successfully. In the zoo, I quickly climbed the top to avoid becoming his next prey, and now I have a complete set of piglins and can watch them for the entire survival. My food supplies are running out, but thanks to my farm, I fixed that quickly. Day 94. I'm inspecting my house, and I really liked the idea of magma blocks on the roof. I started replenishing their supply to build a defense against ghasts on top of the house and further reinforce my shelter. I spent the whole day mining, and by the evening, with a full inventory, I went up to the roof to begin construction. I'm building 20 blocks in each direction to mark out the circle. After such survival, making these markings is very easy for me, and within minutes, half of the circle was done. Day 95. After reaching 5 blocks higher, I started building the second, smaller ring. I would like to make several such levels, elevated above my fortress, to prevent the ghasts from flying up too quickly. At the very top, there will be a crystal, which will become the heart of my entire island. I climbed the mountain to get a view of my base, and I must say, I'm completely satisfied. I spent the rest of the day searching for quartz and repairing my pickaxe. Day 96. I spent the entire day riding a lava mob and searching for white ore deposits. After such a long time, the search is getting harder, as all the nearby areas are simply depleted. I visited the wither skeletons, who thought they had already gotten rid of me. I need another head for the trophy haul. Day 97. In general, nothing interesting happened, but there were a few peak moments when I really should have been worried for my life. After 30 minutes of searching, I finally managed to get ahead, and now I can safely return home. Day 98. The moment of the battle with the main boss of this world had arrived. I started digging a tunnel to the roof of the Nether, but accidentally hit lava and lost the head. In a panic, I accidentally placed it instead of a regular block, and it simply burned. I was really upset, but I don't have many options. Under the bedrock, I found a good spot and made a long tunnel. In general, the battle was quite comfortable because, after spending so much time here, I already knew how to deal with even the wither. Day 99. Losing the recent head kept me uneasy, and I still wanted to get another one. I spent the whole day hunting skeletons and fighting Blaze, but my attempts were in vain. I killed the last ghast in this survival and went inside the fortress, waiting for skeletons. Day 100. The final day of my survival. Over 100 skeletons were killed during this time, but I probably won't get the 5th head. Before leaving, I killed the last skeleton with an arrow, and unfortunately, I had to return home empty-handed. I made frames from leather and began collecting all the valuable items for the trophy museum. On the rooftop gazebo, I built a wall, and in the frame, I added my first golden axe, my first netherite pickaxe, and a nether star. As a reminder of the lost head, there will just be a piece of coal. This is the wall of suffering, the wall that symbolizes all the hardships I went through to show you this survival. Fortunately, my time in this world is coming to an end, and I'm incredibly happy about it. At this moment, my survival comes to an end. Honestly, I postponed it for more than a year, but I finally decided to go for it. More than 30 attempts were spent just to start this adventure and figure out how to find a safe way in such conditions. Thank you all so much for watching. You can find and download this world for the starting survival and my survival world from this video on my Patreon. Leave your comment to promote the video, as I hope it's not too hard for you. My name is Simon, and we'll see each other again soon.